3 months after JFK was assassinated, a key piece of evidence went missing. Some claim his brother was responsible, and the reason why is the biggest bombshell of all. John F. Kennedy remains one of America's most popular presidents, but arguably the biggest part of his legacy was the day he died. After he was assassinated while driving through crowds of excited spectators, the US government scrambled to pick up the pieces, devolving into chaos within a matter of a few days. As a result, the incident continues to raise questions and theories, including who was really behind it. There were more than a few people ready to film or photograph JFK's motorcade, but one recording remains the clearest and most cohesive.
My name is Abraham Zapruder.
Known as the Zapruder film, this 26-second piece of footage captured the entire incident, recorded by spectator Abraham Zapruder on an 8mm camera. By noon, everyone was on high alert looking for the shooter, and reports were already coming in. One witness claimed he'd seen a person of colour aiming a weapon from the depository's second story. Wasting no time, law enforcement took his word and closed the building off. At the same time, authorities rushed the president to the hospital in the hopes of saving him, but the outlook wasn't great. Speeding to the hospital, attendants discovered that JFK was miraculously still breathing. However, with one look at the president, Dr. George Berkeley knew he wouldn't make it. All while JFK's doctors were trying in vain to keep him alive, the authorities were busy trying to catch the assassin before it was too late. They received another claim that the killer had been taking aim from the depository building, this time from a spectator named Howard Brennan. This time, however, he told them it was a white man wearing khaki clothes. Authorities locked the doors of the depository and searched it from top to bottom. There wasn't a soul in sight. Investigating the 6th floor, they discovered the shooter's weapon. The rounds recovered from JFK's car were later revealed to be a match. Half an hour after the incident, doctors declared that JFK was dead, after which anchorman Walter Cronkite took to television to break the news to America live.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
Law enforcement hadn't found the assassin in the immediate vicinity of the incident, but one officer managed to run into the killer by chance. While parked in the Oak Cliff neighbourhood, Officer J.D. Tippett spotted a suspicious-looking man walking nearby and called out for him to come closer to the vehicle. After speaking with the man for a moment, Tippett became more convinced that he was hiding something, a suspicion that would, unfortunately, soon be confirmed. Without warning, the man pulled out a revolver and shot Tippett 4 times. The man tried to leave the scene without drawing further attention, but as soon as people began to investigate the source of the gunshots, he took off running. Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson had also been present during the incident in another car. Believing his life could also be at risk, the Secret Service insisted he return to Washington on Air Force One. Johnson told them he wouldn't leave without the First Lady, and she herself refused to leave Dallas without JFK's body. Not since the turn of the century had a president lost his life to an assassin, so for many of those in charge, this was uncharted territory. A little over an hour after the shooting, police received a call that a man matching the assassin's description had snuck into the Texas Theatre without a ticket. Descending on the theatre, they took a man named Lee Harvey Oswald into custody, though not before he tried to pull out his revolver. On the surface, Oswald seemed like an unlikely suspect, having served as a US Marine, but he was far from a patriot. This only gave him experience as a sharpshooter, and having read the works of Karl Marx at a young age, he quickly became vocal about his communist ideals in opposition to JFK. Oswald had become increasingly antagonistic towards the United States, and by the time he reached his 20s, he was ready to leave his life in America behind. Naturally drawn to the Soviet Union, he settled in Minsk, Belarus, and soon created a life for himself there, even marrying a woman named Marina Prusakova and having a child with her. According to Oswald, he eventually found the Soviet Union much more boring than expected, and within a few years he returned to America, settling in the Dallas-Fort Worth area a year before JFK's assassination. A couple of hours after he allegedly killed the president, Oswald found himself in an interrogation room where he endured rigorous questioning. He maintained that he had nothing to do with JFK's death. While the vice president would have ideally been sworn in as the new president back in Washington, he still hadn't left Dallas. Instead, he met with a federal judge aboard Air Force One and took his oath, officially becoming president of the United States. 2 days later, Oswald was set to be transferred to the county lockup, which should have been simple. Police knew Oswald was at risk, so they provided him as much security as they could. But it wasn't enough. As they were taking him from their headquarters into a car, a nightclub owner named Jack Ruby emerged and gunned Oswald down right in front of police. While many American citizens would have liked nothing more than to see Oswald perish, the authorities still needed him to stand trial, so they rushed him to hospital for treatment. In a strange twist of fate, the doctors who had tried to save JFK were the same ones now treating Oswald. Despite doing everything they could, Lee Harvey Oswald died that day on November 24th. Jack Ruby was taken into custody and charged. However, he would go on to testify that this hadn't been a premeditated attack or part of any conspiracy, and that he was simply upset over what Oswald had done and wanted to prevent it from going to trial for the sake of the First Lady. Ruby's actions became extremely polarizing among Americans, with many believing he shouldn't have taken the law into his own hands, while others called him a hero. As such, even after a brief trial that resulted in his conviction, he faced a retrial a few years later when the courts overturned their previous judgment. Unfortunately for him, he would suffer a pulmonary embolism while still imprisoned in 1967, also dying at Parkland Hospital. The time came for America to honour its fallen president, and it was clear how impactful his legacy was. He may have had more than a few enemies during his time as president, but no one could deny the effect he had on the world, proving how well respected he was beyond just America. Around 1,200 people attended his funeral just 3 days after his death, 90 of whom were foreign ambassadors offering their support. Although the FBI was still conducting its own preliminary research, Oswald's murder opened the door to other possibilities, such as a potential conspiracy. As a result, President Johnson established the Warren Commission under Chief Justice Earl Warren to look into the incident, separate from the FBI. By the fall of the following year, the Warren Commission had examined that day from every angle. Similar to the FBI, the Commission submitted a report to President Johnson, asserting that Oswald was the sole culprit and they had found no evidence of a conspiracy. Over 888 pages, the Warren Commission explained each of the conclusions it had come to, including that just one shot had injured both JFK and Governor Connolly, something not everyone could believe. Conspiracy theorists would later consider this possibility highly unlikely, going so far as to call it the magic bullet theory. Over a decade later, President Gerald Ford created the Rockefeller Commission to look into possible CIA involvement in JFK's assassination. The commission found no evidence that the CIA had anything to do with it, but this still couldn't convince some people, especially after the Watergate scandal aired out the CIA's dirty laundry. Over the following year, doubts about the integrity of the Warren Commission began to spread throughout the government and the general public. In response, the House Select Committee on Assassinations was assembled. At the end of their inquiry in the late 1970s, they officially stated that JFK had likely been the target of a conspiracy, even if they couldn't pinpoint it. An endless number of conspiracy theories have emerged in the decades since. Beyond the CIA, theorists have posited numerous other possible masterminds, such as the KGB, the Mafia, and even President Johnson. As for Oswald, one common theory is that he wasn't working alone, while some have suggested that he was completely innocent. Rather than become clearer since then, the mystery of JFK's assassination has only seemed to get murkier. One of the biggest criticisms was how horribly the investigations were carried out, from the rushed autopsy to what happened to Oswald. For some, this is enough to prove that the investigation wasn't just mismanaged, but intentionally sabotaged. Two of the biggest suspects among conspiracy theorists were a couple of America's greatest enemies at the time, namely Soviet First Secretary Nikita Khrushchev and Fidel Castro. However, both of these leaders were vocal about their own theories, believing that JFK's assassins had been American right-wing extremists. CIA Director R. James Woolsey later deflected the blame by asserting it was all a Soviet plot. Whether any of the wide range of conspiracy theories have any merit, the American government certainly allowed this speculation to grow, especially since so many parts of the story remain unsolved. One such secret involves JFK's brain, and the fact that while it was meant to sit preserved in storage for further study, the Kennedy family checked after 3 years to find that it was nowhere to be found. Conspiracy theorists think it was taken in order to hide evidence that the shots could have come from another direction, while others believe the president's brother, Robert F. Kennedy, had it removed in order to destroy any evidence that JFK may have been ill or taking meds. In the chaos of the moments that immediately followed the incident, one person's reaction remains the most affecting: JFK's wife and First Lady Jackie. Riding with her husband in a motorcade in downtown Dallas, she initially mistook the sound of gunfire for a motorcycle backfiring. She only realised what was really happening when she heard the governor scream. As JFK was shot clean through the head, Jackie appeared to climb towards the back of their limo. The following Secret Service agent believed she was trying to reach for a piece of her husband's skull, which had flown across the car. Jackie herself would testify that she couldn't remember the incident at all, even after seeing pictures. When she eventually made her way back to her seat, she began repeating something over and over again, two haunting sentences that will never be forgotten. "They have killed my husband. I have his brains in my hand." As she was ushered to safety, the reality of the situation began to set in, and Jackie had a decision to make. After her husband's violent and untimely demise, Jackie refused to change out of her blood-stained Chanel suit. She wore it to Lyndon B. Johnson's swearing-in ceremony, where she was asked to be present to legitimize the vice president's impromptu administration. She did it because she wanted them to see what they had done. Thanks for watching History Exposé. If you love uncovering the best stories in history, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring with us. If you enjoyed this video, check out the others on screen for more amazing history content.